Mercedes have dropped their 2024 title challenger. I mean, they're certainly going to hope it's a title challenger. No zero pods in sight. The Frankenstein car that we've got used to over the recent times, it is gone. I'm going to have a look at the livery, give you my opinion on a very different approach to what they've taken for a long time, actually, and give my own version, my redesign of it all. My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. Although, a quick one before we get going, Tommo's Racing Goods t-shirts, I've got 26 left. I've got 183 made in the end, which means I've sold 157. These are the size breakdowns left. I'll never make these again, so get on it. Very, very interesting. The first thing I noticed, the biggest departure for me on this livery from the precedent they've set over recent years is the placement of the Patronus teal, you know, on the side for so long now. Even when it's gone from silver to black and whatever, right? It's always had that teal swooshing kind of above the front wheel and then down below the AMG and below the Patronus to the back of the car. This has now changed. But also they've brought back the Ineos red, at least on the airbox, which on first assessment, I thought was a bit of a shame, but what I will say is, given that this grid, and we've complained a lot about too much carbon, you know, these cars not standing out enough, having a bit of red as their little pop colour alongside the teal as well, I've warmed to it for sure. Because I've seen a lot of people be like, well, you've criticised the Alpine for being really dark, and you can't, you know, give credit to the Mercedes for being really dark, but I think you can. Because for me, right, with the Alpine, the problem I have with it is because it has a colour palette with so much potential, with the blue and the pink super distinctive, super distinctive on the grid. With the Mercedes, the silver, the black, the teal hits and the red hits, that is their colour palette. You know, black is a fundamental part of the Mercedes design language, even going back to the silver days. You know, there was always significant black on that car. And there is more colour on this car this year than last year's car, if you can call kind of silver chrome colour. Anyway, it pops more on camera than black, that's for sure. Now, from this bang-on side profile, I actually really like this. The Mercedes kind of triangle things on the back, they've got to a stage where they're not overkill, but there's enough there, they're big enough that that works as a little design element. The numbers are really small. I noticed that as well. That was quite interesting. And actually, from a side-on profile, sponsor-wise, there's not a crazy amount. They're not shoving them down your throat like some teams are. I do think having the red on the Ineos, on the airbox, and on the front wing end plate, then having, inside of the end plate, having that little bit of extra red between the AMG and the INL, I think that's needed to kind of bring it all together. And you've got the little red star, of course, for Nikki as well. Side profile, I'm happy. Come round to the front, and some people love the front angle. I'm not so in love with it, to be honest. I mean, the silver tongue is cool, for sure. The silver long nose, I don't know what I called it, a tongue. Front wing, I think, could have done with a bit of silver. I would have liked them to embrace the silver a bit more from this front on angle. And maybe a couple of those front wing elements could have been silvered out. That would have been nice to see. But the teal still pops, the way it runs down the side of the nose, that's kind of nice. The Mercedes logo on the nose is a bit big, niche kind of criticism of it. Otherwise, there's not too much to complain about. Some of the sponsors on the nose, actually, I don't know, like the Acadis is like, it's too wide and short a logo. Why is Discord making sounds? I've not even got Discord open. I've turned notifications off. That logo doesn't really fit on that nose, but I don't know. These are just minor critiques, to be honest. Rear end as well. We've got the Ineos on the red, on the back of the rear wing. I would always prefer teams to have their own branding, like if they had AMG on the back of the rear wing, that would be cool. But I understand you've got to pay the bills. And Ineos own 1/3 of this team, remember. They don't just sponsor it, they actually have significant, as much ownership as Toto Wolff and Daimler do. Remember, that's split 3 ways. When I look at the perspective view, the view we're typically going to see this car from, it's alright. I'm not loving it, but I'm certainly not hating it. And of course, having this long silver nose has drawn comparisons to the classic McLaren, the McLaren of old, the West McLaren. And, you know, you mess around with the colours a little bit, I can see that. I can certainly see how you would come to that conclusion. If Petronas weren't sponsoring this team, then maybe this is what we would have, because I'm sure Ineos wouldn't mind a bit more red on the car, but there we go. So where do we put this? Well, obviously I've had a bit more time now to look at all the liveries, so I've made a few little changes to my tier lists. I'm putting Mercedes right in the middle, right in the mid. Minor Clang is now Haas and Williams, because realistically, you look at the spread of teams, I'm not quite convinced by them. Alpine still sits in Clanger, unfortunately. I'm just so disappointed. That's the problem, right? In isolation, that Alpine car looks alright, but I'm just really disappointed. But yeah, Mercedes, it sits in mid. It's not quite on the level of the Racing Bulls, McLaren and Sauber, but it's definitely clear of the Haas and the Williams. Let's have a go at redesigning it. Here is my version of the 2024 Mercedes Formula 1 car. I started here with the teal element that runs through the car. Okay, that's always run through the car to some extent. I wanted to try something a bit different. It still comes down the side of the nose like it does on the real thing, but then when it goes into the back of the car, it actually moves up and in towards the kind of driver number at the back. I didn't want to do it under the AMG and the Petronas, but I didn't want to do exactly the same as the real car. I just thought this was another way of it potentially working. Now, this livery does gradient from black to silver to white. And why white? Well, remember, when was it? 2020? Wasn't it? Or Hockenheim, whenever Hockenheim was. It was 2019, wasn't it? When Mercedes brought out their special edition and everyone dressed up like they're from the old times, and they had an absolute stinker. Bottas crashed, Hamilton hit the wall and broke his front wing. It was chaos, right? They had the white front of that car to hark back to days previous. And I thought, yes, having the black transition to silver, then transition to white, to give a shout to that. Not that it did very well, you know, back then, but then Mercedes aren't doing very well now. So it's kind of fitting. The Petronas logo on the side, obviously when you've got black on silver, you kind of could do with a bit of a stroke, so I've put a white stroke on that just to make it pop a little bit. The Ineos is on red, but the red's on black, just so it's not too dominant on the kind of airbox. And yeah, that gradient, I've used the little Mercedes triangles like they used to use back in the day. Stars, sorry, they're like 3-pronged stars, aren't they? Like they used to use back in the day as part of those gradients, both the gradient from black to silver and the gradient from silver to white. Also, you lot seem to really like on my Aston Martin, where I took the green and transitioned it from the side of the car into the rear wing, and I've kind of tried to do the same here with the Mercedes. So I've got teal on the kind of top of the rear wing end plates, but only on the top. So the nose is very much white primarily, right, with the little teal hits. The sponsor placement is very much similar to the real thing, but I've made those teal stripes come out a bit wider, so there's a bit more room for the sponsor logos along the nose, and you can see the Mercedes kind of stars gradienting up. I think this is really smart. I think this is a really smart front wing lockup. And again, Ineos on the inside of the front wing, just a bit more subtle with the red, but it's still there. Oh, and the Mercedes logo on the nose is fully blacked out instead of being the 3D silver style that they have on the real car. I think just a solid colour Mercedes logo is just more legible ultimately. But you can see from this front on angle that you have that clear transition from white to silver to black, majority black on the rear wing, and then just teal hits throughout. This for me really would pop on screen from this front angle again, which is super important. I've moved Nicky's red star bigger and up onto the kind of side, very much the side of the air intake, to make that stand out a little bit more. Added a little bit of carbon to the halo and stuck the sponsors on. Got a bit of carbon on the side, on the kind of gullies in this model anyway. Team Viewer Solera, I've had to move them around a little bit to accommodate the Petronas line coming through, but I still think that works fine. Still got the big Ineos on the back of the rear wing, and again, they've got a third ownership of this team, so I can accept that. And I've kept the wheel covers all black. Same with the Aston Martin. Sometimes I just think all black wheel covers just make it look mean. Sometimes, like the Ferrari, I think it works to lean into the colours. But on this, all black wheel covers, job done. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below what your take is on my Mercedes redesign. One more to go. Red Bull Racing later on today, 7:30 PM, so be sure to tune in for the stream. By the time this video comes out, I'll have already scheduled that, so come say hello. My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.